Let's look at section 7.5, multiplying and dividing radical expressions. Basically what this means is we're going to be looking at expressions and multiplying and dividing things with radicals. Remember, radicals are just a fancy way of saying that you have a root of some kind. Whether that be a square root, a cube root, a fifth root. Most likely, though, we're going to see square roots. Well, let's take a look at this first example. We have the square root of 2, parentheses, the square root of 32 minus the square root of 9. Well, remember, parentheses tell you that you're multiplying, and we're going to do exactly what you would do if the square root of 2 were just an ordinary 2. We're going to take the square root of 2 and do what you'd probably guess, which is we're going to distribute, multiply it to everything on the inside. So let's see what happens. Because they're square roots, we can multiply them. So the square root of 2 times the square root of 32, we can just do the 2 times the 32, which will give us 64. So square root of 64 minus, on this next one, we have 2 times 9, which is 18. Well, one of these we can actually simplify very nicely. We do know that the square root of 64 is actually a perfect square. So the square root of 64 is just 8. Minus, now we can't take the square root of 18, but we can break down 18 into 9 times 2. And we can take the square root of the 9. That will come out as a 3. The problem is the 2. We can't take the square root of 2, so it will stay inside of the square root. And be careful here. So what we have is 8 minus 3 square roots of 2. The 8 and the 3 square roots of 2, they're not like terms because the 8 doesn't have a square root of 2 on it. So they're completely different pieces, so we can't actually subtract the 8 and the 3. They're not like terms. We just have to leave it as 8, as is, with the 8 minus 3 square roots of 2. And that's it. We can't go any further because they're not like terms. Let's take a look at B. If you saw B, and let's say you weren't sure what to do, if you saw that with, instead of square roots, if you saw x's, so if you saw x minus 5 times x plus 5, you'd probably say without thinking, hey, I'm going to FOIL. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do here, is we're going to FOIL. So let's start off by doing that. So we'll start off by multiplying the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, which is going to give us the square root of 9. Then the square root of 3 times the 5. Well, the 5's on the outside, the 3's on the inside of the square root. You have to leave them as they are. The 5 stays on the outside, the 3 stays on the inside. So it's positive 5 square roots of 3. Continuing with our FOILing, we have to do the negative 5 times the square root of 3. Again, the negative 5's on the outside, the 3's on the inside. You can't mix and match. So negative 5 square roots of 3. And then negative 5 times positive 5 at the end will give us a negative 25. Now notice we do end up with a couple like terms here. We do end up with a 5 square roots of 3 and a negative 5 square roots of 3. Well, they're the same value, but one's positive and one's negative. So what they'll do is they'll actually just cancel one another out. So we're actually doing pretty good here. There's one more thing that we can do. We do have the square root of 9 here. We can actually simplify that because you can take the square root of 9. The square root of 9 we know is just the number 3. Well, don't forget we also had this minus 25 at the end that I can't lose. So there was a minus 25 at the end. So what I end up with is a 3 minus 25. Well, they're both numbers. So they're like terms. I can go ahead and subtract them. What is 3 minus 25? Well, it's a negative 22. And we're done with that one. Continuing